morning, welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, and John. Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's definitely one of those days, isn't it? The post daylight savings fugue is in. It's the Monday after the time shift. Which, typically actually doesn't really hit me usually. One day's enough for me to recover from it, but I didn't sleep well last night, so it feels worse. It feels worse, but that's all right. We're here and we have a pirate girl. Yay! Indeed. What did I use on this? Did I use the Surf Aqua or did I surf? I think I Surf Aqua plus Storm Chasered. Yeah, I think I did that. Oh no. Oh no, Quindy. Well, at least I was in good company starting the stream a little bit late, huh? Yeah. So I'm gonna actually work on this bandana a bit. I think I want to get this other part in, and I want to be able to see kind of how it's looking. So I think I want to do bandana today a little bit and figure out if I want to do some freehand. I want to do it pretty subtle. But I was just thinking about that. I was ruminating upon the bandana this weekend. Hello, crows. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. That's because I when it starts to as I'm hustling with my computer and fighting to get it up on time, I keep thinking about how Ed is always late. And so I don't want to be that. All right, so yeah, looking at this, not a lot of room for a lot of complex freehand. We can do simple freehand on the bandana. There is room for complex freehand here. So technically, if you wanted to do something really involved, like paisley, you could, just because you'd have enough room to show it on the little flags of the back of the bandana. However, I hate paisley, so I refuse. I refuse. Sorry, you'll have to do it on your own minis. There we go. Oh, okay. Yeah, do remind him a couple of times. Oh, dear. Uh-oh, I don't know. Flying without you, Quindy. I don't know if I'm up for that. I don't know if that's part of my contract. I've gotten so used to your extreme competency. Man, my camera's yellowing out again. Camera, what is with you, camera? Camera, what is it? Why? Why, camera? Why? Do I have to put happy little bottles of paint in frame for you? Do I have to make you a little card to just teach you, how your colors should really look? There we go. See? You're a good camera now. Silly thing. All right. So, yeah, I want to work on the head today. Part of me wants to attach the hat soon, to get it kind of all together. Because the hat isn't blocking a lot as long as I can set up the bandana to be the way it needs to be. The bandana does make some things harder to paint, so that may slot in at the end, which I think we can do. If I can figure out how I want to... There it is. Yep, like that. Trying to figure out how it fits in. There we go. Ta-da! There we are. So it fits in like that. So yeah, so this does cover up some stuff. So we don't want the bandana to go in right away, but I at least want to base coat it and see what the color composition looks like so I can play with it. No, I don't want to make a color card. I know I could. This is the only mini I have this problem with, possibly because she's so very duochrome right now. She's just not really, she doesn't have a lot of red tones, and I think that's why it's shifting. But I don't really care. Since it's so seldom is an issue. And honestly, I feel like I have little enough real estate here on my desk that I don't want to bother getting a color card in frame for everything. I'll just grab my little bottles and deal with them when I must. Hello, Babble Rouser. Nice to see you. I am just going to get the rest of this kerchief done. Well, but she's not all blue. Her skin and hair is rather yellow, so that's why we're getting a lack of rosy tones, essentially, because until I put the red in the frame. I don't care about the patterns. Pendrake asked, are there patterns for pirate bandanas that are other than paisley? I don't care about realism on this one. As far as I'm not going historical with this. I'm going as fantasy as I wish. So I don't feel like being constrained. There are times I will look for historical patterns and then I will, use them as a jumping off point. But here I think I'm just going to go for something simple geometric, and so it really doesn't matter to me to be like have verisimilitude in this case. Especially with how cartoony the sculpt is. I'm going to get this going, and then I want some Storm Chaser Blue, I think, just to be my shadow. Pirate follows after Delia. We're in the correct streams. We did Delia on her face on Friday. So Pirate is where it's at. Yeah, I mean, you can totally go like, you could go more realistic with her. I just don't feel like it. I also have 2 of this model, so I'm always free to paint another one in a completely different color scheme, because David didn't want his. So that means I got 2. Yeah, I mean, if you want to use historical references for stuff in fantasy, by all means do, and it can really help you if you're trying to give a sense of verisimilitude to your world, or whatever, whatever you're painting. But you can also just choose not to. And nobody can really knock you on that. And I guess somebody could if you were painting Tolkien and weren't using the right colors. I suppose there are fantasy button counters out there, right? But yeah, you don't have to. If you feel like being a free spirit, you go free spirit yourself. But yeah, Pendrake, if you paint this model, I expect it to have a lot of actual, I want to see the textures and stuff. Your research, because you're into this. I'm going to thin all my paint down here. Just pre-mixing a bunch of colors to deal with the teal here. I want to get at least a basic level of shadow, midtone, and highlight onto it before I etch in any freehand. Because once you put freehand on it, you're going to have a hard time with highlights and shadows. Oh, Shadow Raven! 20 months indeed! Did I miss one earlier? Did I miss a sub earlier? Oh, nice, Inara. Good temperatures. Did I miss a sub? Okay, I just wasn't sure. Sweet. I don't want to pause chat. There. Yeah, I mean, if I was painting a historical model, I would feel more like I wanted to actually research and try to get all the historical awesome. I paint very few historical models these days, though. I like to have leeway to run amok. Yeah, that's what I did for the bandana before I put a drop of Storm Chaser into my Surf Aqua. Then I can highlight it up with regular Surf Aqua and Surf Aqua plus white, or we could even add a slightly one color you can use here. Hold on, I know I've got it. Yeah, this is a great color to use for this. So if you want to kind of pick up your highlight a bit and don't just want to go up with adding white to your Surf Aqua, one color you can add in is Phantom Glow to give it more of a green shift. And giving it more of that warm shift will help to suggest that the light is falling on it, because we already have a warm light on her hair and her face. So that's something that can be done. All right, let's mix all these guys up. And then we can start working. And if I want to preserve my zenith here, although I did take off a mold line there, so I probably should real quick grab my brush on primer and touch that up before we go over this. Because if I want to use thinned colors, then I'm going to need to keep that in mind. So essentially you can get a little bit greener, a little bit warmer there. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. 20 on both. Shadow Raven, great. It's supposed to be 70 here in the, Bay Area steals all the best weather zone. Or South Bay Area, rather. The Bay Area actually doesn't steal all the best weather. It's got a lot more cold and raininess. It's always cold there. Hey, Twisted Oma. I'm going to get just a little bit of white primer to touch up that bit that where I took off the mold line. Honestly, when I just need a tiny bit of it, I won't even put it on the palette. I'll just put it onto the top of the paint thing. Because I took off, there was just a little bit of mold line. You guys can see where I took it off. So I'm going to grab that primer bit and brush it over that. And then I can go and apply base coat. That's a little stronger than the original white, but that's okay. I'll let that dry. So you can see we did get a very nice zenith here as far as how it's working. I do have to take off that sticky tack there though, or I want to. So I probably should do that while I'm waiting for that primer to dry. I did yard work yesterday. It's probably why I'm sore today. It may be why I didn't sleep all that great last night too. But we have like the side of the house right here is right in front of my window here is kind of tricked out to be a bit of a garden. It's got some herbs in it. It's got some sage and mint. But also they were trying to grow like carrots and they were trying to grow strawberries and stuff like that. And there's just no sun. Like because the overhang of the eave, it doesn't get sun till like 3 hours in the evening. So I really felt like not ideal. So yesterday I excavated. I dug up all the big crap that I either didn't know what it was or I just didn't want to grow it there. And also dug up the strawberry ball and planted it in a planter. So maybe we'll have strawberries later this season. I put that out in the sun so it could get sun all day. And I've fingers crossed that the strawberries will love this and that we will actually have strawberries. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. The Persia thing, Pendrake. Oh, that's terrible. Terrible, Shadow Raven. But yes, and yesterday I dug up carrots. They planted carrots, the old owners of the house, the previous owners. And so I dug up a lot of carrots. Some of them which were fairly sizable. So I have freshly dug up carrots. I think I'm gonna make like roasted carrots within the next couple days. But I'm super excited about the strawberries. Like I haven't gone out to check them yet today, but hopefully they'll be happy in their new nook. We also replaced the oleanders finally, the poisonous plants. So now puppy is go because we do not have poisonous plants. Alrighty, let's see here. I think, are we set? Almost. It's almost dry. It's not quite dry. I think I'll test a little bit of this highlight color and see how thin or not thin it is. Yeah, actually, Surfrock was a pretty easy highlighter. It's pretty easy to thin it to the point where you get a decent blend. This is about 2-to-1 paint to water, and technically most paints, if you thin them 2-to-1, you're not going to get this nice of a blend, but I can still see the edge, but that's really easy to come at it from the opposite direction and blend in. So I would say that just a little bit more than 2-to-1 for perfect blending for Surf Aqua. Yeah, lettuces are fine. Puppers don't like lettuces. Yeah, maybe we should plant lettuces. And some herbs will be okay. Like mint is a weed. It grows anywhere. The sage seems to really like the shade. But other than that, like they had planted tomatoes too, and the tomatoes just never got any sun. I'm just like, what were you thinking? And they also didn't do raised beds, which is such, like, the soil here is really compacted and rocky, and it's hard for things to get, like, really get their feet in. And they just didn't. They planted the tomatoes out of the sun and at the corner, and it's just like, yeah. Yeah, your dogs are weird, dog father. My dogs would think your dogs are weird. My old dogs. Oh, I'm well aware. I just go, I mean, they didn't put it in a pot. They put it in the ground, Shadow Ravens. So I just pretty much have to pull up the creepers. I've managed to keep it within about a 2-foot square area. Or a 2-foot long area. And that's fine. But yeah, I'm well aware. Strawberries do that too. Did you know that? Strawberries will actually send out creepers like mint. And if you let strawberries go, you could end up with an entire field of them. But they didn't do very well here by the house because they didn't have enough sun. I am very excited about strawberries. I need to figure out, I need to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get some wire to put around the strawberry planter so that the animals cannot get at it. We also had, I finally have an excuse to get my yard fountain, guys. I need to, also, that's another reason to go to Home Depot. I've wanted a little outdoor fountain for our patio since we bought the house, pretty much. Since before we bought the house, I've wanted one. But then we actually, the other day when we put in the new plantlings along the fence, when we were testing the sprinkler system, we were springing up with a lot of leaks. And I actually thought at the time, and it turns out I was right, but the animals here will try to gnaw through sprinkler hoses to get at the water. So the solution to this is getting my fountain, and then the animals will go to the easier to get water and not gnaw holes in our sprinklers. Our gardener said you can also put out like a bird bath full or something, and just keep it refreshed. So essentially the squirrels have you in a bind because, if you don't give them water, they will gnaw holes in your sprinkler system. Poor things. I know they're tree rats, but I can't help liking them. Yeah, we used to have pick your own strawberry farm near us when I was a kid. And then they sold most of it to a housing development because my little hometown is kind of popular now. Oh yeah, I've got a little bit of crap on her ear. That's fine. That's easy to touch up. Yeah, we have some hawks near here. I've seen one, but the problem is that the other birds tend to drive them away because there's a lot of songbirds and smaller birds in our neighborhood here. A lot of people, I think, have bird baths and bird feeders and stuff like that. So when I do see the big hawk that flies near us, he or she is always being chased by a bunch of smaller birds. So I want to check and see. Always try fit. Remember that a lot of this is going to be covered up. And there's also going to be a fair amount of shadow. So if I put this here, I can see this is pretty good. If she were turned, then you'd have more shadow. But if I put her right where she should be, then all of that bandana is pretty much in the light. You want a little bit of shadow probably in that upper part. So I probably want to actually put a shadow up along here. And I can just paint that in as a band and then grab some of my base blue and wet blend it. And putting that there will remind me, no, Anne, this is supposed to be in shadow. There's a hat here. So get that shadow in there. Yeah, that makes sense, actually, the cashmere thing. They have rugs that have that pattern, I think, I've seen. There are limited bamboos, Twisted Oma. There are species of bamboo that won't do that. But yeah, people plant the wrong kind all the time. especially around here, actually, our neighbor across the fence actually does have a super tall stand of bamboo that is just really not the right kind. But that's all right. That's in their yard, and so far it has not come over. Alrighty, I want to try my slightly lighter highlight and see. I'm probably going to need to thin this a lot more. I'm going to toss a couple of drops of water in it right off the bat. This is the Surf Aqua plus a little bit of Phantom Glow, and I almost feel like I want a little bit more Phantom Glow actually. So why don't I do that before I even start with this? Yeah, we don't have bald eagles here. Not enough wilderness here. Mountain views to develop. Silicon Valley in general. We do get the big hawks every once in a while. But I'm sure the hawks are not enough to stem the rodent population. Oh, real POTUS, yeah. Yes, if you wish to derail the conversation with actual painting talk, please do. Right now I'm mixing up colors just so we can get going on the highlight here and block in this bandana, but I do tend to chat about whatever while I'm doing something boring like that. So please, 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 if you have paint questions, like, speak up. All right, so our colors are, but yeah, like many streamers, I'm not nonstop instruction here. That tends to be more like what I do on my Patreon videos, because then I don't have all the distractions of people talking, and I don't have to just fill time while I do stuff. So streaming is a whole different format. You will, if you watch the various streams, all of my streams are on YouTube, Reaper Miniatures YouTube. But if you watch them, there are some streams where everything is information. And there are some streams where we digress a lot. And it all depends on the subject and how far along the model is. So, okay, so right away when I'm putting that on there, you can see those brush strokes. Like they just stand out, they glare at you. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at those brush strokes. Those are not blending at all. So that means that your color has not been thinned enough. Must be thinned. So that means I need more water in this highlight color here, which is a mixture of Phantom Glow, Surf Aqua 9078, Phantom Glow 9319, and Pure White 9039. And the Pure White is what's keeping us from getting a happy blended surface because it covers really well. I think bamboo is ugly, so I'm not putting it in the yard. I pretty much shut down everybody who gave us yard advice and was like, oh, bamboo. I was like, no. They were like, oh. I just don't like it. So it's just like, you know, what are you going to do? I didn't airbrush it. I just used regular primer, real POTUS. I'm not an airbrusher. It's one of my resolutions this year to start doing more with the airbrush, but I am very much a traditional brush painter. Everything that I could do with airbrush, I can do better and faster with brush because I'm not experienced with airbrush. So if I want to get as good with airbrush as I am with brush, then I need to, you know, devote a lot of time to it. And I just haven't made that time yet. So yeah, but I use regular primer can. I could be more precise if I used an airbrush for my Zenith. But yeah, so whatever you see here with the highlights and shadows, and actually the bandana that we're about to start on here, it's all a Zenith Prime. So I wanted to have, as you can see with her face, I wanted one side in shadow and one side more lit by the sun. And yes, it will all get painted over. In fact, we'll show that here. I've talked about Zenith on several other figures, and there are a couple ways to use Zenith, and not like a lot of painters, I think, don't talk about like kind of the fact that you're going to lose your Zenith pretty fast. So if you're going to utilize it, one, you can take pictures of your model when it's Zenith primed so that you can keep in mind where the highlights and shadows should go. And that's very helpful to you as a new person if you're trying to use Zenith. That way you can refer to your photos, go, oh, that was in shadow, I should paint that dark. You can do glazing over, you know, what they call sketch style, where they sketch in a value sketch underneath and then they use glazes over the top of that. I actually painted a model like that not long ago for my fiance. But even after just a few coats, you are going to lose your shadows. So if you're going to do that, you really need to make sure to put your shadows in while you can still see the zenith. And also knock in some of your purest highlights while you can still see the zenith. Otherwise, eventually, you're going to cover it over and you're maybe not going to have the reference map of what is the brightest and what is the darkest. Yeah, I just tend to, as I'm going to do on this, I just tend to do a quick wet blend sketch that preserves the zenith except with colors. Light is not my superpower. That belongs to my fiance, who's a very good painter in his own right, who is very good with light. He doesn't even have to think about it. He doesn't have to zenith anymore. He just knows how to paint it. It's kind of sick. Like, I kind of like, do I really want to marry this guy? Because really, nobody should have that superpower. But, okay, so now I've got this thinned way down, which means it's going to make less of an impact, but it's not going to leave brush strokes. So when you're layering and you're putting in highlights, yeah, when you thin it to the point where you can get a seamless blend, it's going to feel like you're kind of crawling. Like, it makes a very subtle highlight at first. And the point is that you build it up from there. So if you want to do like really seamless blending with layering, it does take time. Otherwise, you know, if it was possible to build it up fast, then you would see the brush strokes. Like, it's the opacity versus transparency battle. So I like that highlight. That's pretty good. I'm going to keep that. Yeah. I can give David crap. He's at work, so he can't hear me. All right, let's see here. So now this is going to get a little harder now because I have thinned that down to a layering consistency. Obviously, I did not think this through. However, because when you're putting base coats on, obviously you want thicker paint. However, it's pretty easy for me to mix together a thicker version of this so that I'm good. I kept my base color very, very solid, and my shadows are pretty good consistency, but I do need a new highlight if I'm going to wet blend. So wet blending is when you're working, a lot of people call it two-brush blending. Most people use two brushes for it. I don't. So I don't call it two-brush blending. It was originally just wet into wet blending, a term that you would use, like oil painters use also, because you're working a wet color into another color that is still wet and has not dried. So I'm going to build... What was that, Robin? I don't get the 2 drops in the last 5 reference. All right, I'm going to keep this very thick. So I've used 2 drops of Surf Aqua, 2 drops of Phantom Glow, and 1 drop of white. I'm adding 1 drop of water. That's going to make it pretty solid. It's also going to make it a little greener. I might like this color a little better, actually. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not getting any messages from OBS, so anybody else have any streaming issues right now? Or is it just Robin? He does not watch while working. David is pretty, he's pretty focused on whatever he's doing. You know what? I want to do this fast, so I'm going to switch to a bigger brush. Do I want to switch to a super big brush, or do I just want to use my Optima? You're good, Chibi? No issues? Yeah, right, Shadow Raven, right. So giant brush is probably too big. Giant brush says, just looking at giant brush, I'm just like, yeah, giant brush is really too big for this. Sure, Cargain. Yeah, I was just about to start on her bandana, but there she is. She has one side of her face in shadow because she has a hat. So when I Zenith primed her, I had that in place. So you can see that the light falling means that the hat is slightly off kilter. So it does put that side of her face in shadow, and that is why you've got a shadow on that side of the face. But yeah, now I need to get her bandana kind of blocked in just because I want to see how the color composition of the piece goes. So once I have this in here, I want to make sure that it still balances everything out and I'm not overwhelming any particular part. Doing the gold braid and other gold accents on this model will probably... Thanks, Cargain, yeah. This, if you want to see it actually paint in progress, we did several previous streams on this, and you will be able to find them all. Hold on, let me get her card. You can find them all on the Reaper YouTube. They stay on Avad here for a while, but then they go over to YouTube. And the bust is the Angelica Fairweather bust. It was a ReaperCon special bust, but it was an opportunity for me to paint a bust on this show. That's the item number. So if you go search the Reaper YouTube... Oh, are we getting frame drops, Quindy? So if you go to the Reaper YouTube, you should be able to search by either Fairweather Bust or by 1676 and get all of our previous streams where we painted the hair and the face. Let me go and check. One second. Need new window. And need to check my connection. Let me just do that quick and see how bad or good we are. Well, it's reaching for a San Francisco server, and that's not optimal. Usually it's San Jose. Yeah, my download isn't great, which probably means my upload is not optimal. We'll see. It may just be bouncing about a bit. What have we got? Yeah, my upload is a little erratic. It's bouncing between like 14 and 20, it looks like. So considering that on really good days we get like 36, it is a little bit. It should still be okay, but it may be bouncing a bit here. Just FYI. Yeah, that's probably because I was testing the internets. Oh no, not at all, Real POTUS. This is very large. Normal eyes. Where's my normal eyes? Actually, probably Bunny is the best eyes that we've done. She's got very large eyes. Her eyes are very big, and so we were able to do colored irises on her. Like, usually you cannot do a colored iris on a 28, but Bunny has really big eyes, so we could. Let's see, do we have any other eyes that we have done recently that are cool? Not really. We've been doing a bunch of kind of stuff where the eyes have been like, I mean, Lisette has eyeballs. But yeah, usually it's just like, I'm sure I have lots of videos on eyes. Although actually, if you go over, I've got a free video on painting eyes, I think. Is it free? I think it is. I did a long time ago, so it's not nearly as nice as my current like setup, but I did do a free video for my Patreon, I think, on painting eyeballs. If I'm remembering correctly, 28mm eyes. That's over on patreon.com/paintingbig. I think I did one. Pretty sure I did. It's a long time ago. Thanks, Quindy. Well, we're just going to push through, guys, because I can't do anything else. If it gets really bad, I'm sure Quindy will let me know. My internet, however, is not terrible right now. It's just, like, not optimal. So hopefully it will even itself out as we go. I am at the mercy of it, so... Yeah. Probably because we're streaming at a fairly high resolution and we're trying to, and that's what it doesn't like. Alrighty, so let's do a little bit of wet blending. I'm going to hold this like this, even though that's technically upside down. When you're wet blending, you want to do just 2 colors at a time. So like when we start wet blending this bandana, we're going to grab our midtone and our shadow. And we're just going to do those. We're going to kind of ignore the highlights a little bit. Then we're going to go midtone and highlight and do it that way. So when you're doing wet blending, only 2 colors at any given time, please. Yeah, there's not a lot I can do about the jumpy guys. I can only hope that the interwebs gets a little better. It seems to be wobbling between pretty good and meh. So hopefully we can all blame Comcast because, you know, that's the dealio. So if you want to do it this way, I probably would start actually with the shadow. I'm using a bigger brush. I'm going to start with a shadow because I don't want to lose my shadows. So I know there's a shadow all right under here. And if you use more paint on your brush, things will stay wet for a little longer. You can also use something like drying retarder or slow dry. I tend not to like those things very much, so I tend to avoid them. And once I've got it laid in, I'm gonna rinse out my brush. I never used to rinse out my brush when doing wet blending, but lately I've gotten to like it. And then I'll bring it back in and start really just working with what I've laid out here. Blending in the two colors into each other. Then I'm going to pick up a little bit of my highlight down here and start blocking that in. Oh, yeah. The Hotel for ReaperCon sells out so fast, though. It just is that way. So while my paint is still a little wet, I can come back over here, blend that in. And if I need a little bit more shadow, now I can just reach and get it and pull it in here. And that almost looks like airbrushing. It's not as precise, or sorry, it's not as diffused. You can sometimes see a little bit of the brushstroke from the wet blending. And right now I'm just trying to get this upper edge to play with me nicely and blend in nicely. Yeah, way too expensive. It's totally demand driven. So once you see stuff start to dry, that's when you have to kind of hold up. I've still got a little working room. I'm gonna block in this and probably leave that here. Once stuff starts to dry, you can no longer blend it, and then you are in danger of stripping up paint. So especially if you're using very little paint on the model, you really need to be careful about that. 1 second, dropped a paint. There we go. So you want to kind of end up with something that looks like that. And then you essentially have preserved your highlight and shadow from your zenith. Oh, okay. Yeah, you should have been able to get it without joining, but thank you for joining, POTUS. I hope you enjoy it. There's a lot of content. I've been doing it for well over 3 years now, so you should be able to find everything, everything on there. And it's much shorter than watching an 1.5 hour stream. You can, even the longest videos usually aren't over 25 minutes, and I've been trying to keep them a lot shorter because I know people enjoy shorter content. So hopefully you enjoy it. I do love my Patreon. I have a lot of fun with it. I've been working on my $5 PDF for this month. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time today to get that close to done. I have Adepticon coming up at the end of this month. I'm kind of sweating because I know I've got very limited time to finish up my content this month because of all the travel. All right, so now we're going to start the next part. And again, I'm going to start by blocking in shadows. I want to use a little bit of extra paint, let it pool almost a little bit. Then I'll grab my midtone. I won't necessarily rinse my brush out before grabbing my midtone either. I don't really need to. I'm just going back and forth between these dark colors and these lighter colors. So, and if you feel like you've wiped out some things, Like, I did put a dark shadow in there, darker than my Zenith, but I kind of like it, so I'm going to keep it. If I didn't like it, though, I'd just go back in with my mid-tone. While you're working with all this wet paint, you have a lot of leeway as far as, like, how much of each color you use. So you can really shift things with wet blending. Even though with wet blending, you're never going to get, like, a pure version of your highlight or your shadow because you're always mixing them into each other. So there are limits as to what wet blending can accomplish, and when you want to add in those really dark shadows and the really bright highlights, that's when you're going to have to stop and just use layering instead of wet blending. But wet blending is a great way to knock in just starting out highlights and shadows. Hey Rax, and thank you for the resub, 25 months. Lovely. Thank you so much. So yeah, wet blending it's a tool. When I talk about this technique, I like to emphasize that it's not a necessary technique. You don't have to know how to wet blend. You don't have to know how to two brush blend if you prefer that version of wet blending. But if you learn it, it's another tool in your toolbox. And for me, I sometimes like it, especially on something like this, which has a lot of smooth gradation. And as I mentioned, I'm not an airbrusher. So for me, if I want to get these smoother gradients, then wet blending is where it's at for me to set things up. And you can see a little bit of the black primer still coming through here, just a tiny bit. So that's a part where I know it's going to stay darker, and that's just a nice little reminder for me that I should keep that part darker. Now I gotta be careful because this lower part is starting to dry now and I don't want to strip paint up. But I do want to get in here because I have a little hair that's kind of trapped in the paint. I hate it when that happens. There, I think I got it out. So now I need to kind of let this dry and plug it in and see how we look. And this is where I can see kind of, I missed a spot there at the you can see that crack of white at the top there, but that's fine. I can touch that up with layering. So let's back up and put my bottles back in so we can see the actual color. This is good. It's not overpowering. This is why I didn't want to do a red bandana. If I had done a red bandana, I'd have a lot of red out here, way away far from her face. It would be very distracting. And that's why I didn't go that way. Instead, I decided to use the aqua and bring it up a little bit lighter, you know, to still have, you can see the detail. And if I bring in a little bit more shadow back here, it's going to be a really nice color to set off the gold here on her epaulette once I get that in. So the gold should stand out really well from this. And we should be able to have a nice balance of color across the model. But yeah, that's why I didn't go red with the bandana, because even though it would have been an accent color, it would have really risked taking over the model because of this big swoopy cloth that comes out to the side and away from the important part of the model, which is her face and expression. So with a bust, that is always the most important part of the model, and you should always be striving to bring focus to the face. That's kind of the point of painting a bust. So yes, 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 all that. So that's nice and blocky in. Now I know that we're good with that, so now I can move on to other parts of the model. I am going to take my colors and bring this in a little bit stronger up here. Just highlight this top rim a little bit more, touch up that part down here. I think I want a shadow line, but then I want a highlight over it. So even though this is my wedge-shaped brush, it still has a good tip. So I can absolutely hit that little tiny line of white and turn it into shadow. This is the advantage of good brushes. If you are new, but you do know how to take care of your brushes and not leave them sitting in the paint water with their noses getting crushed, then I do highly recommend picking up one good brush, really good brush, even though they're expensive. If you take care of them, they will last you for years, unlike cheap brushes. So I'm going to bring in some of this aqua actually and bring up this little bit here, just where I had that previous past shadow. And I can even use water to wet blend in. Just take a little bit of water and blend in that line while it's still wet. So you don't always have to be blending paint with paint. You can use water to blend paint in. You just don't want a lot of it. You always want just a little bit on your brush. So this is pretty, this is reading really well with that shadow there. I think I could even go darker down here, but we'll see, we'll see. It was reading really well, so I don't think I really want to hit it much. I do want to keep this a little bit. I can refine this. Now, of course, we can add freehand to this. We can add textures to this. This is just a setup. And so just because you've done all this blending doesn't mean that you have to stop here. If you want to add texture or freehand to this, this is a good place to do it from. I'm just grabbing a little bit more color to wet blend this little edge in. I felt like I wanted a little bit more solidity here. And there was a few kind of mucky places where I saw brush strokes. So yeah, you just go back and forth with it. Wet blending can be very tough if you're in an extremely arid climate, because your paint's going to want to dry the minute you put it on. And so if you are in that situation, that's why I say that wet blending is not a necessary technique. It's an optional technique. Because if you are in a very deserty setting, you may find that it's more frustrating than enabling. But if you are in a setting that has more moisture in the air, then you may find that it's a great way to get fast mid-tone highlight and shadow laid in. It takes a bit of like working with to get the knack, but once you've got it, then it's quite good. There's not a lot, sadly, I can do about it, Robin, so I'm sorry. Oh. All right. Thanks, Quindy. Yeah, there's not a lot I can do about the interwebs. I could try to switch to a different server, but usually my computer is pretty good about picking the best one to pull on. So it's only made it worse in the past when I've tried to switch. So the only thing we can do is ride it. If it gets unwatchable or it gets like severely compromised, let me know and we'll just have to end early. We've managed to get almost an hour. Oh yeah, face is still the focus area. Well, all you need to do is like, if you look at, I think even James Gurney covers it in shadow or in color and light, where they've done vision tests where they track where the eye looks and they've showed people various paintings. And in general, people notice things very differently across just looking at regular things. But if there's a face in the picture, they will always look at the face first. Always. Like they may like be distracted at first if there's like something that really appeals to them in the frame. Like there's, you know, I don't know, a dog. Like, so when you look at the thing, you might look at the dog as you approach the painting because you love dogs, but then your eyes will be drawn to the face. Boom, boom, boom. It's so predictable. It's just a human thing. It's a human survival trait because face is expression and expression is intent. And back when we were actually, you know, trying to just survive out in the ancient days, you know, reading the intent of somebody approaching you was a survival trait. So I have a little bit of white here that just is not taking very well. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my base coat and do a blend. But yeah, so doesn't matter what else really is on the bust, is people will look at the face. It's the point of doing a bust. Even if there's all sorts of fancy, you know, bells and whistles and awesome on the bust, Yeah, I mean, it was going between 12 and 20, and 20 is not bad. I think mostly when we're dipping down to 12 is when we're getting the hiccups. Because at 10 to 12, then it's pretty bad with the upload. Alrighty, so we've got a really, really pretty bandana, which I really like. We can do the backside. Now I want to actually double check the backside. So I'm going to socket this in quick. Okay, I'm going to put the hat on, and then I'm going to put that on. So when we've got our hat on, now we can see that there is definitely some shadow from those feathers, right? So let's take a look at how this really goes. Now, feathers are normally a little translucent. I am getting a little bit of the shadow bands here, are actually from some of the feather shadows. This one in particular. When I've got all this here, what comes down to is a lot of this there is some light that's coming through these feathers right here. And that's why we got a prime spot here, because I have this blue tack together to prime it. So essentially the primer came down because I sprayed it from both kind of this direction. And this part of the hair picks up light and this part of the bandana does. But I feel like this is too bright, and likely I've got some light. If the light was falling straight down on her back, then I think that this would be accurate. But as it is, I'm not certain that this being that light is accurate. And so I'm probably going to de-emphasize this, bring this part up, and keep my shadow bands if I can. And then out here, I'm going to bring up actually a little bit more highlight. I feel like maybe my primer was just a little bit too much up here and I wasn't paying attention to this far out bit. So I do feel like there would be light out there if the light was coming from this direction, at least a little bit here. So yeah, in general, I feel like this is fairly accurate, but I'm going to re-emphasize more shadows. I feel like this is not. So sometimes, remember your Zenith Prime is not perfect. It is not actually, often is not really accurate when you compare it to life. Zenith is just kind of a crutch to help you visualize light. It helps you get started. And it goes pretty far, but it is not the end all be all. So then what I will do is block this in with just my mid, grab my shadow, and bring a lot of that shadow over it. Start out with something that's halfway between. It's a guide and it's not a perfect guide. So you always want to kind of double check it if you're aiming to really... If you're not aiming for a strong light source effect, then it doesn't really matter. But if you are trying to pull off the effect of a really strong directional light source, then you do have to pay attention to it. All right, so now I'm see those stripes coming back in. Now, I think I want a little more shadow here. I think I want bright highlight here. My highlight is going to mostly be here. And around that, we're going to blend it out. So we're going to get some serious shadow headed up elsewise. So we definitely want shadow down here, just like the Zenith. And I want some shadow here. Boom. Then I'm going to come back with my midtone to blend that in. And I'm not rinsing my brush off for a lot of this. Yes, time change. Hello, squirrel. We have a squirrel out there. Do not eat my hoses, squirrel. No sprinkler hose attacks. All right, so we've got kind of a gradient. I need a little bit more shadow here. Again, this is you're gonna cover up your Zenith like pretty fast, and so kind of always remember, work on a small section at a time if you must, just to be able to keep that in mind where you want your shadows Yep, silly clock changes. For sure. Now, if I'd been smart, I would have mounted this on a wire or something to make it easier to hold. But as it is, I'm just going to have to suck it up and paint it. And try not to get too much color on my fingers. So getting that dark under there because this is overlapping. No, I am going to rinse out because when I want to go from my shadow to my light, then I'm going to run into trouble unless I'm going to lose a bunch of my light unless I blend that in. Now my paint's getting a little dry, and when you see those brush strokes, that's what that means. It means your paint's getting a little dry. It's getting ready to set up. So you have a limited period of time to do wet blending. Very limited. Depending on your humidity level and whether you're using additives. I just did a thing about additives on my YouTube channel. Additives like Slow Dry and Flow Improver. It's in my new Fundamentals of Mini Painting series that I'm working on. So if you wonder what I'm talking about, you could go watch that. It's a pretty short video. And actually, if you're a beginner in general and you want to kind of get a kind of basic fundamentals look at the base core techniques of the hobby, that's kind of why I'm doing this series for, is to give you guys something you can watch, short videos to just kind of set you up for success with base coating and washing. And we're about to tackle lining. I have my top 5 tips for new painters on there as well. So yeah. We've got a kind of a shadow here, kind of a shadow here, kind of blocking those in. Just block them in rough. And then blend them. Like I said, if you put a little extra paint on the model when you're laying down these colors, they will stay wet for longer. I think a lot of mistake that people make with wet blending is they don't put down a lot of paint. You don't want to flood the area, but you do want the paint to kind of still be wet for, you know, it's still wet. It's still wet. You can see that I put it on pretty thick. I don't mind the time change. I actually look forward to it every year because I like it being lighter in the evening. It makes me feel like summer. It gets me ready for warm weather. Something to look forward to. And then, of course, in the fall, it gives me more sleep. I'm going to ignore my zenith here because I'm pretty sure that I would get light out here. I just wouldn't get, I just didn't quite hit it with the primer because it was way out on the side of the model. So sometimes, like I said, your zenith's not perfect and you should question it if it seems like it doesn't make sense. Yeah, kind of do a mix though. And if we get very dark on the top there, which remember it's under feathers, so there is a reason for it to be a bit darker, we can bring in our lighter colors. I know at this point I'm so used to daylight savings, I really don't mind it. It's become part of the seasonal cycle for me. Hey Eric, how's it going? What feels right beats physics, yeah. All right, I need one little bit more of this, and we've lost our reds again. There we go. My base coat paint's pretty thick at this point, so because we've been painting all stream. So I need to be careful with it. You always want to use thinner paint. Even for wet blending, I use thinner paint. Not like super thin paint, but at least paint with a bit of water in it. Like a 4 or 5 to 1. Yeah. Yeah, Babel, I'm there. I'm there too. I like the extra hour in the evening. Oh well, we'll just agree to disagree. There's always going to be people who it seems to work better for than others, and there's always going to be people who really, really hate it. And maybe it will go away eventually. A lot of people seem to not like it, so, but I don't mind it. Lost a little bit of my blending back here, and this has totally dried, so I can actually come back with another layer. And that's the thing. If you don't get your blending nailed right away, don't worry about it. Once it's dry, you can actually wet blend another layer over the top. And this is another reason to use slightly thinned paint, even for your wet blending. And if you're afraid that you won't get coverage over your primer, like if you want coverage with your wet blending and you're afraid that you won't, just thin it just a little bit. Do a 5-to-1 or something. But you want a little bit of that water in there because the water is going to, 1, keep it from being clumpy, and 2, it's going to keep it from drying as fast. So it is a pro, not a con, to have that little bit of water in there. And chances are, if your mid-tone is high coverage and your highlight is high coverage, you're still going to get decent coverage. Oh, Rhonda's show will not be on this afternoon? That's a bummer. Oh, that reminds me. I'm supposed to be doing dutiful things. Hold on. Ron wanted me to do stuff for you guys. Ron wanted me to bring something up. So let me just get this bit in here, and then I will bring something up per Ron. This is why I get the promo bones models. But you guys are also getting promo bones models, and so I need to talk about that. I'm going to grab some water and blend that in. Just some water. A little bit of water, maybe a tiny bit of paint. There. That's better. Okay, we'll come back to that because I hate that I lost my shadow. But anyway, Bones 6 stuff. And that looks pretty. Coming online here. Ron wanted me to bring something up for you guys. So, where's my favorite? Well, we can do the Elfie Wizard, I guess. He's not my favorite, but he'll work. Alrighty. So, if you order from Reaper right now, you have a very good chance. It's not every order, but you have a very good chance to be getting one of these promo minis, which are part of the adventuring party that Rhonda painted up. So you'll get these. They'll be in a snazzy Bones 6 thingy, and you can get one of 5. And when you flip it over, for one thing, if you want to know about Bones 6, you can go to there. But if you flip it over, it also has a QR code for you, and it is launching on the last day of March. So you've got a nice QR code to scan, and the information, and the website, and you get a free promo mini for Bones 6. So just be aware that if you order this month, you will probably get one of these. If you're going to Adepticon, Reaper sent about 1,400 copies to Adepticon for the goodie bags, so you may also get one. Yeah, you might have a bonus fig, so you may have one of the adventuring party in there, POTUS. So yeah, so that is Ron wanted me to be sure to bring that up and to talk to you guys about that this is going on right now. So if you're excited for the Kickstarter, but you've been thinking about ordering something, you should order and maybe get a super special mini. And I asked him if it was every order. He said not quite every order, which means to me maybe it's just supplies, like while supplies last, and then they get in another wave or whatever. But it's they're spreading them out a little bit, and I think they probably are randomizing which one you get. So I have no idea, Shadow Raven, on that. I believe, let me check my Ron texts and see if he specified. One sec. Let's see. All right, let's see here. Okay, he speaks as if it is currently happening. He sent these guys to show folks what we're randomly throwing into orders and stuff. The QR code and web link on the card are the main thing to share if you could. And I said, absolutely. Is one going in every order? And he said, almost every order. Also, if you're going to GaryCon, 400 went to GaryCon for promo as well. So that makes it sound like it is happening now. So anything that internet has to process is probably falling under those rules. Yeah, exactly. It's going to depend on the stock at the time that they're actually packing your order. If they run out and they haven't gotten time to run and grab a new box or whatever, then maybe a batch of orders will go out without them. That's why he's saying almost, but it is something that you will more likely get than not. So yeah. Yeah, probably the beginning of March, Crows. So yeah, just so you guys know, you could be getting a free Bone 6 promo mini. Woo! So yes, go use the QR code. Go fly, be free. Oh boy. Okay, well then, let us see what we got. Because I actually really want to attach her hat. So I'm thinking we're pretty good. Now, at this point, I've got enough blending on here that I probably could just go with this, but I'm not going to tack on this for a reason, and the reason is freehand. If we're going to do freehand or any texture, and texture pretty much counts as a form of freehand, on this bandana, we can't have it attached because right away you can see that epaulette is getting in the way. You can see that, it itself blocks painting this shoulder. We don't want to do that. So I will keep this unattached. Mostly I wanted to get it done, as I mentioned at the earlier part of the stream, I wanted to get this done to make sure that our color composition was still pretty good. With a model like this where you've got a part that takes up space and is an accent color, you probably do want to at least kind of sticky tack or hold on the pieces to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm going to hold that. I'm going to back out. We're going to look at her long distance and see how the colors. I think that color works really well, actually. It's reading really nicely. It's beautiful. It's aquatic. It's marine, if you will. This is probably her best angle right here. This is probably the best angle in the figure. So there we go. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how this compositionally is coming out. I may consider using this light marine, like aqua color as an accent somewhere else on here. I'm not certain where I would put it. I might be able to put it in this little area here and on this side as well. Just to carry it over, because right now it's all on this side, right? And it is on the other side of her head, but it's like going to be in shadow and it's going to stay pretty dark. Whereas there is a little bit of light falling through on this shoulder, just picking up a little bit of that primer. So I could get away with like putting little splashes of it there and there. And that would help to continue the color across the model, which when you introduce a color like this, you can just leave it one spot. Technically, her eyes are also the same color. So that's another reason it's working. Yes, exactly, Jormander, you got it. So, but if I can even carry it over into a little bit over here, then that would be a really nice thing to have as well. I was thinking of maybe making that gold instead. That's the thing. But she's going to have gold on the shoulder here. So I kind of go back and forth and this is where color composition comes in. This is what color composition is how you distribute the colors across your model. And how you do that is going to impact kind of how balanced or pleasing things look when people come to look at your mini. And the best scenario is that you have if you do a strong color, you repeat it across the model so that the eye naturally wants to travel around the model finding the incidences of that color. So, nope. No, these are acrylics, POTUS. So if I want, and actually I did this weekend on my own stream, I have a Twitch stream myself. That's twitch.tv/paintingbig. I do not have my saran wrap anymore. But what I do if I want to keep the colors, POTUS, because as you can see, they're all still wet. I've kept them wet all this stream. And pretty much the key to that on a palette like this, you can see one is the small well. And then if I use at least 8 drops of fluid between the paint and the water, it's going to stay good for at least the hour and a half of the stream. And if I make a note to just keep dropping like a bit of water into them, they're pretty good. And that's because the depth of the paint keeps the surface limited, so the evaporation is limited. And this is why adding water, this is why adding water is key, because it will keep your paint wet for longer. And a lot of people who have paint dry up too fast, pardon me, need to rescue bit. There we go. People who have their paint dry too fast in a palette are either using one with very large wells where the surface is pretty much all exposed and it evaporates right away. Or they're not putting water in their paint. So it doesn't, if you don't have that extra fluid to keep it, it will dry. And because it's acrylic, it won't come back to life. Watercolor is the type of paint that comes back to life when you add water. So here, after this stream, I've got two choices. One is I could put an extra drop of water in all of these and a couple of drops of water in the wells surrounding them. And I could take cling wrap, saran wrap, and I could just wrap over the top of this palette. And if I do that, this paint will stay good up to 2 more days. And technically, if I'm working with the paint, in my experience, I could keep it going maybe 4 or 5 days before it starts to maybe granulate, like this dry stuff on the sides maybe starts to go down into the paint and it's no longer as good. So even using this dry palette, the well palette as I call it, I can keep it extended if I do a lot of mixing and I decide I don't want to remix everything, or I know that I'm going to be working on this model successive days in a row. So you can do that. But other than that, I also, if I'm not going to do that, I just wash it out right afterwards. The paint here is still pretty soft and I can clean it out, make it all nice and shiny like it is here. Yeah, putting water in the adjacent wells, in my experience, helps to keep everything moist underneath. It helps to keep it from drying further. And then don't put too much extra water into the paint itself. Usually I just do 1 drop in each. And if I've recently, like I just put water in this one, I might not add more water. Yeah, Babel, pretty much what I do is like right after this stream, since I'm not going to keep this paint, I'm going to take the palette and I'm going to take it to our paint sink, our hobby room sink. And I'm just going to run warm water into it, warm or hot water into it. And then I'm going to take a green scrubby pad, one of those just, you know what a green scrubby pad looks like. And I just find that I just have to do that because since I've been working with this paint, it hasn't had more than, an hour time to really dry here. It's still pretty soft. And with the addition of water, a green scrubby will bring it up. If you have had these paints dry in here, then you're going to need to put it in a sink with some hot water and probably a spritz of 409 or Method or whatever household cleaner you've got. Simple Green works wonders too. And let that soak so that it loosens up the paint. But because the porcelain is a glass-like finish, and that's why you specifically want a porcelain palette, not a plastic, it'll come right up. Then you can just tackle it with a green scrubby. It'll be a little more work than it will. Like, it's almost no work at all to clean this off after streaming because it just really hasn't had time to dry. Also, because I'm thinning it so much, that also keeps it from really being rock hard on the sides of the palette, and it means it's much easier to clean. When you put that on a model, do you mean Jack Jester? Been noticing bubbles in your paint? If you see it down here, it doesn't really matter. The reason paint bubbles is that it's got something in it called surfactant. And what surfactant does chemically is it binds everything together. But the side effect of surfactant is actually that it produces bubbles. And they use surfactants in soaps. So when you see the bubbles, it's the same thing that makes your dish soap bubble. Or your hand soap, or your any other soap. Surfactants are there, they serve as binders, but the side effect is bubbles. So if you are getting bubbles in your palette, don't worry about it. If you are getting, if you're getting it on a model, bubbles, there are 2 things. One is if your paint, if your paint is thin and you're doing a really fast brush stroke, especially if it's over texture, you'll see bubbles. I see bubbles sometimes when I'm putting stuff down. The key is just get down and blow on it sharply. It'll pop the bubbles and you'll be just fine. The other thing that can cause bubbles is if you're using a synthetic brush, which is a stiffer brush, not a natural hair brush. And the stiffer brushes will likewise, they'll have that kind of like stiffer or more abrasive brush stroke, and those tend to produce bubbles, especially when you thin your paint. And so you're going to get them. You can mitigate that by moving to a softer sable brush. You notice I didn't Even when I was painting on this, I didn't really get any bubbles at all. Part of that was that if you notice my brush stroke, I'm not going real fast, but I'm also using a very soft sable brush. So the combination of slower brush stroke and softer brush, and this paint is also not super, super thin. So if you're doing a wash, for example, you may notice more bubbles. At the same time, again, all you have to do is get down and blow on it, and the bubbles will pop. Just blow on it a couple times if you have to. Yeah, no problem. All right, have fun, Shadow Raven. Yeah, you could use alcohol if it dried, but I don't find it necessary. I honestly just put it in the sink with hot water and some cleanser. I prefer to go with like non-toxic and non-abrasive solutions if I can. It doesn't really matter. It's just my personal preference. It's the way I tend to roll. I don't actually keep alcohol in the house as far as like rubbing alcohol. I don't think, unless David's got some for airbrushing. But then I don't know where it is. So, but yeah, I think our little bandana actually worked out really well. We have a few more minutes, so what do I want to do? I'm thinking. It's always a kind of a bummer when we like come to the point where I'm like, okay, this is a good stopping point, and it's not over. Any other questions? I guess I could just take questions. Just painting questions. And maybe I'll look at this. I want to look at it from the back and see how it looks. The color at least matches up here. That's nice. It's the end of the stream. I'm going to stretch in a second anyway, Cranston. I don't stretch in my morning stream anymore because an hour and a half is pretty good. I'm pretty good for that. Because I do all my morning, I do a 10-minute yoga session every morning now. So my back is pretty good unless I freak it out. But yeah, if you have any other general painting questions, guys, like launch them. Launch them at me while I get my my hat here and see if I like how it looks. Okay, so there, I feel like that went a little bit too far down. See, you can kind of feel it. When you look at the model, you're like, I see a feather there. I feel like this needs a shadow. Like right through here, this shadow needed to be up farther. Current palettes are, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, Quindy just linked to my tools thing, Real POTUS. And actually, this is my favorite palette. I have two of them. It is I am not going to show the dragon yet because Ron only sent me a headless, limbless dragon called Stumpy, and I don't want to show the dragon until I have all of it. So Quindy just linked tools in the chat there. If you look at the first link, POTUS, cheapjoes.com, that's the 28 well porcelain palette. That's what this is. I love it because the porcelain is so easy to clean. And if you're used to Ferrero Rocher trays, these are smaller. They're going to make your paint stay wet for longer because those are actually, as I recall, the Rocher candies are actually about maybe double this size or maybe a little less than double. So yeah. Yeah, I just showed one in blister, but I can show it again. I can show you all of them if you'd like. You've seen them because Rhonda has been painting them, right? So hold on, let me straighten out my camera. And I was just looking at this. I do want to fix that part because I feel like it needs more shadow. But I can grab my Bone Sticks minis. So I have the adventuring party. So I have 5 minis here. So we have the Torchbearer lady, who I think is a rogue, a human female rogue. And again, you'll get, if you make a Reaper order this month, you've got a pretty good chance, depending on supplies, a pretty good chance of getting one of these randomly. Torchbearer, and then we've got the female dwarf, who's probably a cleric, but I haven't quite looked at her shield, but I believe she's a cleric. So she's cute. Actually, she's probably my favorite. And then we've got the elven male mage, who we showed a second ago. And again, the QR code back here and the website is there for you if you're interested in the Bones 6 Kickstarter and what's going on. Go ahead and use that. And then we have a little halfling warrior, because why not? Because Bobby Jackson likes kick butt small people, I think. So halfling male warrior, You could paint him as a paladin, probably. I haven't looked. These are obviously young adventurers. These are meant to be low-level adventurers just from their gear. So this is pretty cool as a starting party, and that is backed up by the fact that their foe is a very hapless, about-to-be-smooshed goblin. Technically, you could use him as a goblin barbarian if goblins are a permitted race, or warrior if goblins are a permitted race in your game. So this is the adventuring party and their foe. But yeah, he looks kind of fierce. He has an evil skull type emblem too on his shield, so that implies he is a villain. So yes, so those are all the minis except for Stumpy, the headless, limbless dragon, who I have to come up with a name for. Like, apparently Ron really wants me to come up with a name for it, so he must be stumped. Ha 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 on on the dragon names. Probably because he has to name so many of the dang things. I helped him last Bones. I named Shavinra. That was my name. So we'll have to figure out. I'll have to figure out what I want to, some possible names, most of which he won't like. This is Ron, by the way. Ron is very particular, and he won't have a solid idea himself, but he'll know very much what he doesn't like, much like many people with art. So yeah, I'll have to figure out. I'll give him a bunch of names, and he won't like any of them. Okay, so I want to knock down this area. And I'm going a little lighter on the paint this time. So I mostly want to blend in these areas just a little. And I want to shade more here. Could also just glaze to knock this area down. Brush sizes vary greatly by brand, Eric. So let's get some examples. Let's see, that's a 2, that's a 1. Where's my tiny brush? Tiny brush, where are you? Here you are. And where's my Raphael? My Raphaels both have tubes on them because I was just traveling. All right, so out of these 4 brushes, 2 of them are size 1. One of them is a size 000, and one of them is a size 2. And if you didn't know which was which, you might think that this is the size 2. And you're pretty sure that the little one is tiny. And you think maybe these both might be 1s. And you would be wrong. Because you would be right on the tiny brush. This is Da Vinci. It's a size 000. And then when you get into the zeros and the multiple zeros, it means little. But when you get up here, you will see that actually these 2 brushes, the 2 on the left, are actually a 1 and a 2. Even though the one on the right here is shorter than this one. So then you've got this one off on the side here, and it's actually a size 1, just like this one is. These are both size 1s. So this is an example of different companies having different sizing depending on the shape of the brush and the brand. So essentially, when you come down to useful sizes, what I usually tell people, Eric, and this is not always true, but mostly true, that you are pretty good with a size 0 or 1. And often you'll be able to go down to a 00 or a 000. This 000 is about as little as I'd go. However, this 000 is about the same size as the Reaper Kalinsky 010. So that would be 10 zeros. 0/10 is essentially a 0 series brush. Or 0/5, 0/10. Those 2 brushes are still very usable from the Reaper Kalinsky Master Series brush line, the black handled Reaper brushes. So, but in general, except for Reaper, if you're ordering Reaper, I would actually if you're ordering Reaper's Kalinsky Sable line, order smaller. 05 is the workhorse brush, in my opinion. Otherwise, if you're ordering from Da Vinci, if you're ordering from Winsor Newton, if you're ordering from Raphael, if you're ordering from any other brush company on the planet, make sure you get the short-handled brush, not the long-handled, and go for something around a 0 or a 1. But it does vary. if you're looking at a particular brand or shape of brush, you should ask on the Reaper Discord or on, forums, places like that. Ask them, hey, I'm looking at Raphael. I'm looking at this series. I'm looking to paint 28 millimeter. I'm new. What size should I get? Yeah, or I'm experienced. I want to do this. Ask for some input. Take it with a grain of salt. Not all of it may work for you, but in general, that's a good way to get an idea. Some people will say, oh, that brush is way too big for me. I had to actually go with a Winsor & Newton instead. Stuff like that. So yeah, the Discord is a great, great place to ask and get feedback on that. Yay! Hey, we've almost made it. We just have a few more minutes to take up, which I will promptly take up with finishing blocking in that shadow a little bit more. So I'm going to put my tubes down so I don't lose them, because I always need brush tubes to keep them protected. And always hang on to your tubules, people. Like, everybody tends to throw out the tubule that you get with your brush. Do not throw out the tubule, because when you want to travel with your brush, you want that tubule to help protect it. And when you go to cons or your local game store to paint or whatever, you're going to be traveling, and it'll help. It will help greatly to give your brush that extra layer of protection. I've got a little bit. I'm going to glaze. So let's grab this shadow color, throw a bunch of water into it, make it really, really transparent, and then brush it over this whole area. And if I'm going to stop it there, I'm going to rinse out my brush and kind of feather it back this way. This helps keep it, by feathering it back with water, this helps keep it from having a sharp line, but it still darkens down that area, which I wanted to do. There we are. Yay! Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Ron won't go for that. I have experience with Ron's likes and dislikes on dragon names, and so I'm heading into this well-armed for the most part. I did lose a little bit of my highlight here, though. So I'm going to fix that, and then we'll at least have this blocked in. Yes, Sturgeon, it's good to see you too. Have a lovely rest of the Monday. I'm just hoping to eventually wake up. That's my goal for the rest of the day. I would like to wake up, please. And I already did way too much caffeine yesterday, so I cannot do a ton of caffeine today. Woe is me. So there we go. So we've got that nice bright light there where the feathers are going to have light coming through them. I may expand that just a little bit over into this area so that we've got a little bit of carryover. But yeah, so I go back and forth a fair amount, just kind of adjusting, using my brain to kind of interpret what I've done and see if it really reads correctly in my mind. So yeah, kind of like that. It's pretty though. It's very pretty. So I'm pretty happy with that. So we can lay that aside, and next time maybe we will tackle a little bit more of the dark blue. Maybe we'll start bringing up the dark blue. Or maybe we'll actually base coat a lot of our cream color here. So I can show you guys how I would probably wet blend a base coat on the cream. Pretty dark, probably. Go pretty dark with that. So we will tackle that, I think, next time. Unless I feel in the mood to block in gold. It's always a roll of the dice on this model. I'm what do I feel like working on? So, but I'm pretty happy that we worked and got this bandana filled in, at least blocked in. So excellent. Thank you all for hanging out and coming to the stream today. Tomorrow, we are going to work on this. Our Stormy Mage, or Celestial Mage with, I keep thinking of her as Storm now because she's got silver hair. Yeah, Starbloom, Elf Wizard, her. We're going to work on her. And I'll have to figure out what I'm actually doing. Who knows? I may launch it in an entirely different direction. Originally, I wanted her to be a Celestial Mage, but now I'm I don't know. So, we'll see. But tomorrow we'll work on our Elf Wizard. Yeah. That's the goal. I'm a little random this week. Apologies in advance. Thank you all for coming. I hope you're enjoying the bust at any rate. And yes, we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks you so much for bearing with the stream hiccups as well. Thanks all.